the cat. And out of the wilderness of Kibwezi emerged Mwengi Mutuse, the little-known MP for Kibwezi West and the surprise mover of a motion of epic political proportion. We're on the impeachment front row seat. And shifting sideways, there was a shift in the Kenyan health sector as NHIF became SHIF, and the Social Health Authority, SHA, came to be on the 1st of October. Teething problems have been experienced, and so we are on the dental watch. On our final words later, Sam Sense will be trying to make sense of the tradition of troubled transitions around the country's major initiatives, like SHA. On Jamila's memo, the Survival Kit series continues. Don't mix your voter's card with your medical cards. And on my take, Kenya's winter of revolt meets short memories. Kaikai's kicker takes an impeachment break, pending resumption next week. The gang is here.
Kama mtu wenu amefanya makosa, anapigwa kama anarudishwa kwa nyumba. Hatupigangi mtu tukimfukuza. Hawezi kupiga mtoto wako ukimfukuza.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the program and thank you for joining us at Citizen TV Kenya. The hashtag is NewsGang. A lot to talk about. This was a heavy week. In fact, Tuesday was the day.
It feels like
the first of the month. It does feel like ages ago. It was the first of the month, was it not?
Yes.
It was.
On that first of the month, two big events happening at the same time. We will get to matters health in a moment. But first, finally, Waswahili husema hayawi
hatimaye huwa.
Murima huwa, if you like. But finally, you know, we got to know, because there'd been a lot of talk, Sam, about whether there was an impeachment motion, about how many people had signed it, about who would be the mover of the bill, and, you know, finally, Tuesday, 2:30 in the House, that is what happened. We will come back and talk about what MP Kagusha is talking about.
Right.
But, yeah, finally, here we are, now we know.
Right. You remember there had been a lot of talk the previous 2 weeks, people saying that there could be, it may not be, we have signed, there's nothing like that, it's just a wild idea. The president had been away, came back quietly, I think over the weekend. It was about Saturday.
Yeah.
And of course, there was a lot of movement that Kenyans, many, didn't see. But as the silence was continuing, signatures were being collected as late as the night of Monday, because there had been this promise to Kutane Tuesday, that Tuesday it would be. Later on, the Speaker of the National Assembly revealed that indeed he had been notified of such a motion on Friday, and so the standing orders allow him some 3 days, and the 3 days were expiring on that particular day on Tuesday, when he now presented the chance, gave the communication from the chair that there was such a motion, and Mwengi Mutuse was the man to table the motion. And I remember just asking in our journalistic work, who will be the mover of the motion? There are many people that are posturing on different platforms saying that I'm the one who is going to move. Someone saying that I'm going to impeach you myself.
Yeah.
But
that was all a ruse, wasn't it, though?
Oh, yeah. But eventually now you see that from the unlikely quarters, from the thick of Ukambani, Kibwezi West, the man cometh.
The hour there.
Yeah, Mwengi Mutuse reading that motion. But quite interesting, you see that there was quite, is there what you call the concerted efforts of everyone who was in Kenya Kwanza or allied to the current administration doing their part, because now it emerges that actually the signatures are being collated from regions. So different regions were being steered by different leaders in those regions to make sure that you get the signatures, but under the watch of the minority and majority leadership, whether it's the whips or the majority and minority leaders themselves. Eventually you have sufficient signatures. But even as these signatures were being collected, it now appears that there were signatures, a separate process from the writing of the motion itself. And that is why you're finding some of the voices that are coming out to indicate that there's a possibility, because if you have to look at the motion itself, the 57-page motion, towards the end, there's a list of, I think, spaces of about 228 or 238, actually 238 spaces of people that are supposed to indicate their name, the constituency they come from, and their signature, but it is all blank, meaning ideally the signatures were supposed to be appended to the motion, but the signatures were actually collected separately. That's why you'd find people going to a particular office. There are even images that were shared on social media and WhatsApp
of people signing.
They're doing it in caucuses.
Yes.
Yeah.
So while they are doing it, you can see people signing, including, I think it's Johanna Ngeno from Memurua Dikir. He was positioned 200 and something. So it tells you something. But then, of course, now, for the first time, MPs and Kenyans were able to see the grounds of impeachment.
11 of them.
Yes, and I want us to, we'll get to, who signed, who didn't, and the process and what happens next. But, from Tuesday to today, there have been attempts in court to stop this at various processes, including just today when Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua moved to court, and he was seeking to stop the public participation exercise that kicks off tomorrow. The court declines to do so, but offers to hear his case on the 9th.
The day after.
The day after.
What would be the process of the National Assembly?
I think there's one of those cases, if I'm not mistaken, that will be had on the 7th. Yeah. The day of the...
the eve of...
Yeah, the eve of the debate, yes.
Yeah.
So there are how many now? I don't know, how many are there now? 5 or 6 cases that he has filed so far?
Or that have been filed.
That have been filed by different people.
Yeah.
And then the court says with all of those, like one was filed by former UDA Secretary General Cleophas Malala, another one was filed by a gentleman today, I don't know if he was called Victor, there was another one that was filed by an organization through a lawyer. So in all those instances, one was said that the court will hear it on 7th of October. I think 3 are on 9th of October. Basically, as it stands, we'll have public participation tomorrow, Yvonne. And then, of course, this issue of public participation, I know we're going to discuss it at length, but maybe it's important that we point out that it is not in the Constitution per se.
Actually, it is.
That for the impeachment of a deputy president?
Article 118 requires Part A that Parliament conducts its business in an open manner, and its sittings and those of its committees shall be in public. B says Parliament shall facilitate public participation in legislative and other business of Parliament and its committees. So this could be
one of those
other business of Parliament and its committees.
Yeah.
But I think when you talk about public participation, it is...
dotting our T's.
Yes, but the zeal with which Parliament has, on this occasion, chosen to take public participation quite seriously. The motion was tabled on Tuesday.
Right.
By Wednesday, they already had a full schedule, and that was already published in all the local dailies the following day, stating areas across the country.
Constituencies.
The majority leader and others in Parliament were, really keenly asking the MPs to go out and lead the public participation process. Well, clearly Parliament knows what to do when it comes to public participation. It is interesting. I'm not sure we've seen this kind of efficiency and zeal for Finance Act or a number of other pieces of legislation or indeed other business that is being conducted by Parliament. So you can see they're taking this seriously. Indeed, the House was literally full on Tuesday afternoon when the motion was being debated. I remember the Speaker would have to pause for a minute to allow those who had entered the chamber to then take their seats. So, this is when you see, Parliament and or government.
Efficiency at work.
Efficiency at work when it is something that, is dear to their hearts.
In fact, they suspended House business today to start the preparations. We're being told that staff from the National Assembly were being sent to all those places across the country now for that whole public participation exercise. they did list where in each area, I think like the constituencies in one area, people would go to have the public participation session in a particular, maybe a social hall, maybe a school, maybe a university. For me, my worry a bit is also the distances to some of those places. For instance, Marsabit is a huge county. Yeah. Turkana is also big. Mandera is also big. So you want people to converge in one particular place, maybe somewhere which is about 300 kilometers away. How will you get people there? Is it part of the plan to mobilize people and bring them there? As you say, this is a process that is being supported by Parliament. And even you talk about how it is in the Constitution about the fact that public participation. I remember when we were having the session on Tuesday in Parliament, after the impeachment motion was tabled, Speaker Moses Wetangula went and consulted with the House Business Committee, and then they came back and said that it has to be done before Rigathi Gachagua and his representatives or his lawyers are heard on 7th, I think between 5 and 7 p.m. I think we need to look at this as Parliament trying to avoid any pitfalls. I remember the intro you're reading, it took on the same. They say they are trying to dot their I's and cross their T's. Because we are trying to look at precedent, what has happened before. Remember in the motion against former Embu Governor Martin Wambora, there were numerous attempts to impeach him. And one of the reasons why one of the impeachment motions was nullified was because it was due to failure to hold public participation forums. I remember during the time of the first Makueni Governor, Kivutha Kibwana, in a different process, Lady Justice Mumbi Ngugi ruled that he wasn't given a fair hearing, violating his constitutional rights, and the impeachment was halted. So I think in trying to make sure that this goes through, even, 291 of them were they, who voted to have the impeachment motion tabled vis-a-vis 117 that is required by law. So inasukumwa. Nasukumwa tuhakikisha kwamba wanamuondoa. But then now, Yvonne and Gituku, one of the bites that we saw, I don't know if you can go to that now, is now the about turn by some of these members of Parliament.
I want us to hold on that about turn for a moment and just talk about the grounds. And we'll come back and see, who these people are, who signed, and who has suddenly had a crisis of conscience, like 48 hours later. But these are 11 grounds that have been put forward, Sam, and the evidence, of course, as well, has been added, and we will see that playing out next week on Tuesday. But 11 grounds for impeachment.
Right, and just to cut some slack on the National Assembly, the standing orders require that once the Speaker receives intention of such a motion, then he has 3 days to dispense with it, meaning that what happened on Tuesday was the right thing. Then the same standing orders indicate that once notice of motion has been given by the sponsor of the motion, in this case Mwangi Mutuse, the House has 7 days to dispense with it, failing which then that motion would die, would be considered to have been withdrawn and cannot be reintroduced within the same session. But like you're saying, the efficiency with which this has been done is quite a record efficiency, which then may tell you that as soon as the Speaker received that communication on Friday, even picking Friday as the date of delivering the communication was deliberate, and then a lot of work must have been done between Friday and Tuesday afternoon to ensure just most of these things are working efficiently. But also give it to the management of the House. This is led by the Clerk of the National Assembly, that you would see very efficient movement, the administrative work that was being done, including today, that those that are going to steer the public participation exercise were moving now to the regions, to the 47 counties, for them just to be able to undertake that exercise. But now getting to the grounds of impeachment, and you'll find that they're relying very heavily on sentiments or the utterances that the Deputy President has made over time since coming to office. And I think one of the greatest ground that you will see is what is in the first ground, the gross violation of the Constitution, different articles that are indicated, which basically the illustration is on his sentiments about the country being a company of shares, that people who vote are buying shares and therefore they should be benefiting. The illustrations of even when you have children, watoto wote hawatoshani, so there's a way you treat children based on certain considerations. And if you're to look at it, the motion goes into detail to explain how this departs from Article 10 of the Constitution, that is on national values, where you talk about the ethnic diversity and how people need to be respected, accusing the Deputy President of inflammatory and insightful utterances. And so the day of Tuesday is going to be a very interesting day when the move, of course, will have these 60 days. I mean, what did I just say? 60 minutes. 60 minutes to make a case for this motion, because to just cite is one thing, but now evidence, to explain it so that the members can be convinced. And then later that evening, you're going to have the Deputy President come in to respond. So I don't know how he's going to respond to this question, because remember,
the clips are there.
The clips are there, right?
Them last week.
And once that has been put as a ground, so the House is being called to determine, does this amount to violating several articles of the Constitution? What does he think? What is his defense? Because for sure he said those words.
Yeah.
What does he think about that? Then if you look at the other ground, which is undermining President Ruto, and they're citing Articles 147 and 152 of the Constitution, saying that being the principal assistant of the president, that he undermined him and the cabinet and the national government in execution of the mandate of the national government, saying that the deputy president has on several occasions contradicted the president. This is an interesting one, and I'll be waiting to see how the mover is able to canvass it, knowing too well that the same constitution allows freedom of expression. So how much of freedom of expression as a human being or as a Kenyan first, how much of that goes against the president? Because even when you're taking oath of office, you're taking oath of allegiance to the Constitution and the country, but in no point do you take the oath of allegiance to the president. And knowing too well that the president is also human and is free to express himself, so where do you insubordinate him? Where do you go against his pronouncements? Because his pronouncements, especially when he's speaking at an event, he may be explaining the government policy, but also within his speeches, their personal opinions. So that would be an interesting one.
Yeah, and I think some of the issues that you hear being cited is how he would speak after the president, or speak in a separate, setting after the president has spoken. I want us to listen to one of those, as we now start to, take a look at what some of the utterances of the Deputy President have been. And one of those was on the 26th of June this year. This was the day after the Parliament breach on the 25th. The President spoke first here in Nairobi, and the Deputy President then spoke after him in Mombasa, in which there was, I would call a rather scathing attack on the country's intelligence service. Watch.
It is clear there has been a failure in the intelligence and advice we are receiving, particularly concerning crucial government policies. The President of the Republic of Kenya today has admitted that it has come to his attention that the people of Kenya did not want anything to do with the Finance Bill 2024. The President has now agreed that we need to listen to the people. And I sympathize with my boss, President William Ruto, because this information was not available to him. I know President William Ruto. Had he known 2 months ago that the people of Kenya did not want anything to do with the Finance Bill 2024, he would not have asked his parliamentary party to push it through. Yet, we have an organization paid by the public to give him and government such information. And that is where the problem is. We have a dysfunctional National Intelligence Service that has exposed the president, the government, and the people of Kenya. Had the National Intelligence Service briefed the president 2 months ago about how the people of Kenya feel about the Finance Bill 2024, so many Kenyans would not have died. Property would not have been destroyed. Offices would not have been touched. There would have been no mayhem.
Right, so that is underground number 8 on gross misconduct of the Deputy President by attacking the Director General of the National Intelligence Service. And the motion is accusing him of demeaning the person of the NIS Director General. Because you remember, even the quotation that you find in the impeachment motion is accusing him that he was a junior officer who was just brought on board, is inadequately qualified to be the Director General of the NIS. So they are saying, or the move of the motion is saying, that by these utterances, he's undermining the national security. And of course, he sits in the National Security Council, so there would be an expectation of a collective responsibility. But then again, so now the House will be called to determine how much of those utterances are an expression of a public expression of a personal opinion, how much of that falls under freedom of expression, and how much of that falls under the gross misconduct that you'll be talking about. Because he was speaking and saying how frustrated he has been to witness an intelligence service that was giving the wrong intelligence. But now we'll have to wait and see what are the details, because there has been several accusations that certain powerful officials within the government are also responsible for some of the events that you saw during the breach of Parliament on the 25th of June. So I don't know if more evidence will be coming, or this is it, but also how he's going to explain his utterances. And remember, recently when he spoke to the Deputy President on the 20th of September, and I asked him that question about whether he stands with his utterances on that particular day against the Director General of the NIS. And he said, you know what my statement is. Yes. It is available. It was live on your channel. Go find it and listen to it. I asked several times, do you stand with it? And he couldn't give me an answer. And it was quite a moment.
Yvonne, on the same about how the evidence will play out and what will be said during the event, the process itself on Tuesday, I think, Yvonne, it's important for us to understand that impeachment as a process is a double-edged sword. Inakata pande zote mbili. I give an example of when Governor Kawena Mwangaza was impeached the first time and the second time. And I remember she was saved because of the strength of the evidence that she presented at the Senate. And in an impeachment process, I think one of the tactics that the defense can use is that you turn your own trial into the trial of your accuser. In one of our impeachments, I remember Governor Kawena Mwangaza turned the table on her opponents, especially when she played clips that had not been seen in public before. In those clips, so shown that there was male chauvinist, she was being attacked, even her anatomy was being attacked, and the senators were shocked. And the impeachment failed. I think what we would expect when Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua comes to Parliament on Tuesday, if he does come at 5 p.m. kujitetea, it will look like an open-air laundry session, Yvonne. Why am I saying that? Because remember, the movers, as Gachagua said, will be bringing their case, which will be based on, if we use the laundry analogy, bales and bales of dirty laundry. So as the motion movers come from one door, Rigathi Gachagua and his defense team will be coming from the other door with whatever evidence they have. And you need to look at this as a counter-attack game. It'll be interesting to say what the defense team will say, and it will put forward because there are a lot of accusations that have been put forward. Of course, maybe the interpretation that will be required, maybe more evidence will be required, because this thing better be really, really good enough, Kumtoa. And then on that matter of the shareholder narrative and the utterances by the Deputy President, in my opinion, I think it will be interesting that for the first time, our leader in this country will be taking the dock on the issue of tribalism, if you bring it up, if you look at it that way. Because this has been a sensitive matter in this country. It's not really talked about openly. People talk about it in harsh tones. It's ignored sometimes, depending on who's saying it. We have seen some people being taken before the NCIC for saying things that are tribalic. But I think this will be an opportunity for Kenyans to talk about tribalism at a top level. I say this because would we, for instance, hear about appointments in this government coming out during this? Will the defense team table it? Because if you look at that shareholder argument, is it possible that he's just a loud shareholder? There are others who are silent.
Right.
Yeah, he was speaking out, lakini kulikuwa na wale ambao walikuwa naunga mkono anasema nini, lakini they're doing it silently. Or is it possible that maybe this was the game all along, that have him speak out and others silent, but you're supporting him. I remember that instance where there were those KRA jobs, which were revenue service assistants, where two communities took a majority of these positions. I think out of the 1,406 positions, 785 came from two communities, while 621 were from the rest of the country. Will this be illustration be canvassed at the trial? Will this be some of the issues that would come up? Whether it's parastatal appointments, we've seen numbers going around. Will this be subjected to scrutiny? Because we know after elections we hear about cabinet appointments, nani alileta nani, nani ni mtu wa nani, who nominated who. In fact, even the other day when we had the broad-based government happening, when ministries, they said that ministries that had been reserved for the mountain went to the lake. In this instance, maybe if you look at the person who was initially picked as the nominee for the CS treasury position from the mountain, but then it ended up going to the lake after the broad-based government. So will these issues all come out to play? Because kumbuka hivyo hapa ni kujitetea. So will you spill the beans? Utamwaga mtama wako, mimi nimwage mtama wangu. Right. I think Tuesday will be very interesting.
It will, and I want us to now get to talk about, what you've both alluded to in terms of the people who signed the 291 and then what happens thereafter. So, for the motion to have met the requirements, you needed a minimum of 117,
yeah.
which is a third. Right?
Yep.
But you require 2/3 of them to vote to impeach.
233.
Which is 233. And so, for the collection of signatures, at least for the beginning to table the motion in Parliament, they far exceeded, the minimum requirement of 117. But then now it would seem, these signatures were being collected over a what? From what we hear, 2-week period? But these were tabled on Tuesday. Mm-hmm. Their names were read out, but just 48 hours later, some of them have had a change of heart. I want us to listen, Robert, if we can, to MPs from Central Kenya, some of whom say, okay, well, hang on. I know we appended our signature, but we're going to vote differently. I mean, I think the idea is that you can vote to impeach, for the motion, but, during the trial process, when, evidence is being presented and the mover is prosecuting the case and the one on his defense is able to, that vote could change, right? That you might be so convinced by the defense that, you change your mind about how you vote. But it's interesting that they signed, but now they have a change of heart. Watch.
Claims they are baseless. These claims, I believe, they are just a way of intimidating, especially myself, because I have been very vocal about supporting the Deputy President. I also voted no in regard to the finance bill. They even send you backdated KRA returns. They also sending auditors. And I know more will come. But we are relentless in this pursuit because we stand for the truth and we will not be cowed or intimidated by anyone.
All right, that's Njeri Maina. She actually didn't sign, and is talking about how this has no basis. I want us to listen to the people who actually said they signed, my apologies, and who are now changing. Let's start with Wandeto.
And we asked them, they do not see this as a priority. They think there are other priorities that we should be focusing on. And as representatives of the people, I think it behoves upon us to listen to our people and do what they have asked us. So on Tuesday, I will be voting no.
After researching na after kusoma hiyo kitu yote nikaona our deputy president, hii ni kitu wanaweza kaa chini na president wetu wajadiliane, kwa sababu Kenya ni kubwa kuliko sisi wote. Na kwa hivyo ndio sababu nimekuja na tumewasikiza, nimeshida the whole day nikisikiza ground, na watu wa Nyeri wamesema deputy president hawataki atolewe.
I want to make a personal commitment that what the people of Kenya will say is what I'll go with. It has never been that the member of parliament have the final say according to the constitution of 2010.
So the change of heart has come pretty quickly, and it's interesting that when they were appending their signatures, they didn't supposedly consult their constituents, but did so, 2 days after the motion was tabled. Sam?
Great efficiency.
Yes.
Because
a fool, they say, what's the saying? A fool...
Only a fool doesn't change their mind.
Oh.
Now, this is interesting. And there's another letter of Pamela Njoki-Njeru, the woman representative for Embu County. And she says that after careful reflection and serious consultation with my constituents, be assured that my conscience and your voice as Embu people will guide me to vote wisely in accordance to your wish when the motion is tabled. Of course, it's already been tabled. So what will happen is the debate come Tuesday. Yeah. Now, the standing orders dictate that once a signature has been appended and the motion tabled, it cannot be withdrawn.
Yeah.
But give it to them, for sure. They'll have to be convinced by the grounds and the case put forward by the move of the motion. But there's something interesting. Honorable Mukami is saying that after looking at the impeachment motion, I may paraphrase, she does not find any useful grounds to impeach. And she thinks Rigathi Gachagua and William Ruto should meet and resolve their differences. What does that tell you? For someone who has already appended their signature.
What was she appending her signature to?
Exactly. So it's a question that has to be asked because, yes, you can get support for an idea. You can get a signature in support of an idea. Okay. But what should happen? Do you first see the motion and the grounds? Even if you don't see the full motion, do you first see the grounds, then you append your signature? Or do you give your signature because it's a good idea and wait for the grounds? In this case, what must have happened? Clearly, it appears
which came first?
That the signatures came before the motion. It appears. It may not be true. Yeah. It may not be factual, but it appears because some of the members of parliament are already distancing themselves
based on the grounds.
Based on the grounds, exactly.
Yeah.
Now, again, this is a reality that is dawning because they are saying that they are going to listen to the ground. And I think even when you listened to this gentleman from Mukurweini, John Kagushia, saying that when you're punishing someone, you do not beat them while chasing them away from home. You beat them, you punish them while returning them home. Quite an interesting way to say that you don't disown your own. One of the grounds of impeachment against Rigathi Gachagua is that he has been talking about his community, where he comes from, to the exclusion of the rest of the country. So an interesting conversation that is going to go down there. But it also tells you the impact of the ground politics when it comes to this conversation. We'll be waiting to see how they vote. There's something that you are talking about, some of... when you played the clip of Njeri Maina, so she had complained that she has been invited by the Directorate of Criminal Investigations in Kirinyaga, or is it Kerugoya? Well, Kirinyaga County, to go and record a statement because it was believed that she's organizing some people to disrupt the public participation tomorrow. And now she's being invited, but of course she excused herself, saying that she's involved in Nairobi with a lot of things that are happening here. Of course, she's on the side of the Deputy President, and they've been working on a lot of things on possible scenarios and how to approach them. We also understand that even the cases that you're hearing in court being defeated, they may not necessarily be being filed by people sympathetic to Rigathi Gachagua or by himself. It could be another ploy. We'll wait to see who exactly is sponsoring some of those cases and what exactly is the motive. But then again, even as the members of parliament from Mount Kenya are starting to come out and say that they're going to vote with their conscience and what the people in the region are saying, it'll also be interesting to hear, because the move of the motion is saying that the wealth of the deputy president has grown to 5.2 billion shillings during the debates. The deputy president himself said that he's worth 800 million shillings. In the recent interview, he was saying that a lot of media houses were reporting in 2019 that it was worth 12 billion shillings. Right. Others were reporting that it was worth 7.5 billion shillings. So I didn't have a problem of money. I'm just paraphrasing and quoting. So then what does that mean in as far as his sincerity when you're facing the public and saying that you're worth 800 million shillings, but now you're saying that actually you owe,
you had
more than even what is being spoken about in the 5.2 billion shillings. But then also, this is a very important moment because every state officer fills a wealth declaration form when they get to office. For the president and the deputy, they fill the wealth declaration form and they deposit it with the Speaker of the National Assembly. And it's a confidential document to be opened, I don't know when. Is this a point that the House can actually ask for that evidence in as far as when he came to the office, how much was he worth? So that then, because you may dispute what was said in the public debate conducted by the media, but what is the actual document that was filed? So if you're able to pull that out and say he owns this 1, 2, 3, 4 versus what he owes now, you do the calculation and say, what is it? Then there's that allegation that he has been owning property with his family, the 2 sons and other close family members. Well, how do you prove that? Because these are adults who are free to own property and to conduct business. That chain would have to be determined. But then again, are members of parliament interested into facts, or is it the probability that this could be as a result of proceeds of crime?
And remember, because this is a quasi-judicial process, it is as much political as it is a legal one. And when I was speaking to Charles Kanjama here on Tuesday, he talked about, the threshold and the burden of proof, because this is not a court session, so you don't have to prove
beyond reasonable doubt.
Some of those allegations beyond reasonable doubt. And so remember, this is also, heavily political. And as I understand it, there is no threshold for, if you've got 11 grounds, on which to impeach, that there has to be a minimum on which you find him guilty. Maybe it's 1, 3, 5. Just one is enough. And a lot of that is, is based on sentiment, on feeling, on political, because it'll be up to the parliamentarians once again to vote. But I think this will be a test in many ways. For a number of reasons. So first, it's the first time we're impeaching a deputy president. We've had quite some experience with governors. And what you're talking about, the wealth declaration, it's also a matter of, what was said versus what is in those papers, if they're able to fish those out. Was he then being rather modest, and I use that word here as a euphemism, during that debate? Was he not as truthful as he should have been? But I think also, like you were saying, the issue of tribalism. Now, this is the thing that will come out. If we will now then have a proper audit that brings this out and states very clearly who are these shareholders who are, sharing the spoils of government. Is this the moment when, both for the prosecution side and on the defense, in terms of the deputy president, they say, well, this is what it is. These are the numbers. And then, I think there'll be lots of moments of reckoning, including also the issue of public participation that, the Speaker took cognizance of, saying the courts have faulted Parliament on a number of issues, a number of legislative pieces regarding public participation and how that goes. The manner in which the threshold for that, what you do with that information, will that be made public? We're going to be live with that tomorrow. And so you'll get to hear, it's a public hearing session, but there's also memoranda. So to what extent will you start to hear? Because these other MPs who've soundbites we've just heard from are saying they've conducted their own public participation and they've been told that this is not the right way to go. And so now, will Parliament be fairly honest and open about all the memoranda they have received, all the public, like what we're saying, they would classify them and say, okay, so a number said, yes, impeach on these grounds, do not impeach, or like what you're saying, we're hearing, impeach both. Will we now get, an open one regarding that?
Right.
Considering it's something they have taken rather seriously.
When you talk about that thing of impeach both, Yvonne, in a bit I want us to listen to some of the locals, what they were saying today. But before that, on the MPs, I think you talk about the dicey situation they're in, looking at the national politics vis-a-vis what's happening on the ground. Because if some of them want to get re-elected, I'm assuming most of them want to get re-elected, they have to deal with this local pressure.
Right.
And I think one of the question the MPs are asking themselves is, does the pressure increase or decrease?
It decreases.
If you sign the motion, does it increase or decrease? And what about the electorate? Of course, in the mountain,
Yep.
They're not resonating with some of them. I think the UDA base in that area, because most of the people, when they voted this government in, they voted them in because they believed in the dream and what was being the plan that it was, and that's what they voted for him. They did not vote for them because of impeaching each other. For them, what is more important, they've been demonstrating about prices of tea. They're talking about the bonus prices. They're talking about coffee. That's what is important to them. Some might ask, was there an incentive for these members of parliament to sign? Kuna wale wanasema signatures are not collected with dry hands. I don't know how true that is. But I think from the members of parliament, it's a heavy praise and it's a risk they're taking. If they go this way, na ground in our harakisha, as we have seen. And finally, remember in June when the finance bill debacle and the whole thing happened, what happened to some of these members of parliament when they went back home? We saw people apologizing by writing letters. We saw others printing things on T-shirts. We saw others going on social media, kuomba msamaha. We saw some being booed at their meetings. So I think Mwananchi has learned that they can say what they want to say and they can put pressure using different ways. Let's listen to what some of the people had to say today about this whole thing, impeachment.
Ikiwa makanga ni baya, dereva ni baya. Wakienda waende wote.
Na kama watu milioni 8 walivoti Gachagua pamoja na Ruto, alafu haiwezekani aende agushwe na watu 200.
Juu si tulishagua Ruto juu ya Rigathi. Kwa hivyo mtu akiguza Rigathi, si tunamguza.
These are some of the residents, I think, of was it Mukureni? I was speaking today, where there was I hope I'm not mistaking, mchanganying my where they were. But we had quite a number speaking on Semana Citizen today, I think in Kisii, Narok, in Nakuru. And there were two things that clearly came out, Yvonne and Gituku. One was they were saying, tuliwachagua pamoja, kama wanaenda waende wote. Or two, wasikizane. Let them come and sit and talk and agree. Yeah? Because when we elected them, we elected each one of them for a reason. Maybe the mountain people are saying tulimchagua Ruto kwa sababu ya Rigathi. Maybe others are saying tulimchagua Rigathi kwa sababu ya Rais Ruto. So either wote wawili waende ama wote wawili wakae. But tomorrow will be, I think, the beginning of some very interesting things. What people will say.
Just a very quick clarification. And I remember the analogy that Bobby Mkangi, who was on the committee of experts, gave to me on Tuesday, that yes, while it is a joint ticket, they're twins, but they're not Siamese twins. They're not joined at the hip. In fact, the Constitution does contemplate impeaching or removing each from office, and there's separate articles of that in the Constitution. Article 150 deals with the removal of the deputy president on the grounds of physical or mental incapacity, or on impeachment based on the grounds of gross violation of the Constitution. And then Article 150 then lays out, 145 lays out the process of removal of the president. Right. Although, of course, what they're raising is perhaps a moral or a political question, but that, it doesn't necessarily go that if you impeach one, then they both go. Just a quick one on that one.
Right. Just receiving a communication from the former leader of majority, that is Aden Duale, who is writing to us and he's watching the show. Thank you for watching the show. And he's saying that you append your signature after reading the motion. So when you hear some of those sentiments of people saying that once they have now read the motion and they feel there are no grounds, that appears like it's an inconsistency. He also says that MPs should read Standing Order number 51 in full. A special motion cannot be withdrawn, neither can you withdraw your signature. Letters of withdrawal can only be sent to the Speaker, not the media. Choices can only be done on the day of voting. I think we're going to see very interesting days ahead because, again, remember, one of the other grounds which I think it's important that we cite before we close on this conversation, that the Deputy President is accused of abusing the independence or assaulting the independence of the judiciary in that particular matter of Justice Esther Maina. Remember, this is the judge who was hearing the matter of forfeiture of some 200 million shillings that belonged to Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua. And so the mover is saying that by interfering with Article 160 of the Constitution, this is going against the Constitution itself. But then again, you have to ask yourself, we've had a lot of political leaders going at the judiciary.
Right.
Of course, some of them say it at the safety of Parliament, where you have the space to say so, but we've not had them calling out specific names of judges.
Correct.
The president,
even when the president said it earlier this year, he was, you know, rather general. There are some corrupt judges.
Exactly.
Just to illustrate your point, let's listen to number 5, where the deputy president, and this was shortly after coming into office, making this very personal attack against Justice Esther Maina.
On Thursday, this coming week, at 2:15, I'll personally present a petition before Lady Chief Justice Martha Koome against Justice Esther Maina for her removal from the judiciary for misconduct and corruption. Huyo judge, through corruption, declared my hard-earned wealth proceeds of crime without giving me an opportunity to be heard. Against the rules of evidence, where he who alleges must prove.
So,
Sam, there is no evidence that he actually did go present anything.
Actually, that last line, he who alleges must
prove.
He'll be required to do that on Tuesday.
Exactly.
So, look, the motion says falsely threatened to bring action against the said judge.
Yeah.
So you have to ask yourself, what was happening at that time? Did he actually mean to take that action? And what happened between meaning to take the action and failing to take the action? Is it that he was persuaded not to start a war with the judiciary? He has a case to respond to come Tuesday.
Yeah.
And it will be interesting to hear what he says about that, because really, just like the situation in Nairobi County, where he's being accused of violating the Constitution on the Schedule 4 on the separation of functions between the national and the devolved county governments, or the devolved units, again, the same analogy that he's interfering with Nairobi City County in the work of markets, which is the purview of the county government. So Mwenge Mutuse has work to do. So does the Deputy President.
Indeed. By the way, as we have done with all of the other major pieces of legislation in the country, where we aired the public participation exercises live, we will be live with the public participation tomorrow, Friday. That starts, it's from 8 to 5 p.m., so you want to stick around for that. Let's take a break and come back and talk about the big shift in the country.